Just thought I'd check as we started off this week's pod, Popey. Are you planning on taking any more games off? Because I got to tell you, no offense, but getting back in that booth with Mike Torkia a couple of times over the past week was a lot of fun. That man still loves the game, knows it pretty damn well.
Listen, I am very self-aware. At least I tell myself that I am. Mike Torkia can do a better job broadcasting an OHL hockey game with his eyes closed than I can. Okay. I have no qualm saying that. The man is awesome. I don't have a bad word to say about him in any facet of the manner, but I don't know if I'm missing any more games because I don't know how deep the Rangers are going to go. We're in a 2-2 series here, and I don't know. Some people calling the Rangers for an upset before the playoffs are probably thinking that they're looking pretty smart right now, but still a best of 3, and you still have to win at least one in London if you are the Kitchener Rangers. So if I'm missing any more games, I'm not sure. Depends how long the schedule goes. But as far as the first round matchup schedule, the answer to your question is, sorry, you are stuck with me for the next 3.
We're just going to have to find excuses to get Torch back into the arenas, back onto broadcasts from time to time. He's been on this podcast before, but he's just a treat when it comes to the game. There's no doubt about that.
I sent the text, sorry, Mike, just real quick. I sent the text to our boss saying that I was going to miss the games, and I threw out, I said, maybe you could ask Torch. That would be my suggestion. And I looked at it and I was like, am I texting myself out of a job?
I think Torch made it pretty clear that he's done with buses. He's done his time, and much like you've said over the years too, but he may have ridden a few more, but there is a number of miles, although I don't know how Don Cameron never reached those number of miles. But anyway, it was fun. Torch, obviously a great guy, and if you haven't heard that podcast yet, oh my goodness gracious, just go back and find it in our archives, because he's one of the beauties that we've definitely had on this podcast. We'll obviously talk more about, you mentioned 2-2 in the Rangers Knights, and some people picking before the playoffs that it might be an upset with the 7th seeded Rangers winning the series that we're covering. Some other ones there that people might be feeling less smart about. I'm thinking Flint Owen Sound specifically. I had somebody tell me it was going to be the attack in 4, but we'll get into the rest of the playoffs in just a sec. Obviously, this is also draft weekend, so Michael Misa and the rest of them is how it's going to go, right?
Yeah, and it was. And to no one's shock, Michael Misa gets exceptional status, and he is taken first overall. Announced, we're recording this on Thursday evening, announced today that obviously, yes, Saginaw is taking him. Talent aside, I don't know enough about any kid in this draft other than Michael Misa, because he was breaking someone's records named Connor McDavid. That's going to make anybody take notice. But the biggest thing about Saginaw taking Michael Misa is you essentially get an extra year out of the player, right? So you almost have to take him, other than Ottawa not taking Sean Day, just because you get an extra year out of your player. It's an extra year asset that you have that you normally wouldn't get.
It's funny you say that, because I remember a conversation many a year ago with Steve Spott when he was the head coach and GM in Kitchener. And he talked about, that's when we started seeing more and more players taken up to the NHL as 18-year-olds. And he talked about how difficult that made it as a general manager in the Ontario Hockey League when you're trying to kind of figure out your team and you're doing your forecasting. Is this going to be a 2-year player with my team? And what's the impact if he is? So yeah, 3 years. Look, it doesn't sound like much, 2 versus 3, but it means a ton when you're planning your team and plotting out how things are going to look a couple of years down the road, for sure.
Absolutely. And that's where the difference is. Like, whether, let's say they had player X slotted in at number 1. If it's close between him and Misa, if Misa's right here and this other kid is right here, you take Misa just because you get that extra year, and you hope that extra year he gets even better. But everything you hear from this kid, it was not even close whether he was going to get exceptional status, and it wasn't even close whether Saginaw was going to take him. So I just hope he can handle the pressure, and I know he's got a good supporting cast there. Obviously, Joey Batano, with his new position, he'll help the kid out. Dave Drinkel, the general manager, Chris Lazary, he's insulated with some good hockey people and some people that'll help him through the process. And I wish him nothing but the best, except for when he's playing the Rangers, because nothing sucks worse than a ride home from Saginaw when you didn't win.
Ooh, good point. Good point on that front, for sure. I had a great chance to chat this week, or I had a great chat when I had the opportunity to chat this week with Ben Whittle, who follows the OHL draft for hockeyprospect.com and the scouting service. And he says it's a pretty deep pool. So I think we're going to see some talent come through in not just the first round, but maybe even beyond. So yes, Misa's head and shoulders above the rest, but certainly you're going to find some gems in this draft. He's found a lot of guys that he's enjoyed watching in their draft year as they come into the Ontario Hockey League. So it's great to see. Obviously, we just finished the year with the double cohort, kind of start seeing some normalcy return, and maybe we're still seeing that normalcy in these OHL playoffs, because I came in all gung-ho, Poper, and I know we're not close to done yet. Well, Ottawa is. Hope you enjoyed your 4-game ride through the postseason, but I'm not feeling as optimistic about the upsets that maybe we would see as I was coming in. I just thought maybe it's going to be one of those fluky years, but Kingston's taking care of business. I kind of like Oshawa there, and I know it's only 2-1, but Owen Sound Flint is another one. I heard a lot of people saying that it wasn't going to take too long for the attack, especially the way they came into the playoffs to finish off the Flint Firebirds. And here we are as we record this in a 2-2 series there. So maybe not the kinds of upsets we expected, although it's still obviously not the end of the first round yet, except for Ottawa.
At this point of the playoffs, there is only one team eliminated, and that was the team that you selected as an upset, Mike.
Well, I did, and that honestly, it was strictly for poops and giggles. I'm not going to take it back, but I mean, I really did think that Oshawa would make it interesting against Kingston, and at 2-1 as we record this, maybe they will. I do think Owen Sound will win their series, the 6-3 with the Flint Firebirds, but having not seen the East at all this year, and just really hoping that Dave Cameron can coach defense, the Ottawa 67s, through a first round matchup with the North Bay Battalion. Clearly, I was right out to lunch on that one. So just give me 2 other upsets, okay? Like give me Kitchener over London, give me Owen Sound over Flint, and I'll be happy. But who knows?
It's allowed. I just had to point it out. That's all. Because I said I wouldn't bet against Adam Dennis. I learned that lesson a long time ago. Never bet against Adam Dennis.
Oh, but his name's going to come up in this podcast. He told the story when he was on the podcast. Now you get it from the other perspective. Great story. You'll know what we're talking about when we get to our guest this week. But yeah, it's fun. It, makes me think real quick that our guest this week may have committed some, like if he had done this in the streets, it would have been a crime. You would be in legal trouble for that, which gives me an opportunity to remind you that our partners on this podcast and the sponsor of this episode is Waterloo Regional Crime Stoppers. Always remember that it's a bunch of volunteers that are behind this board of governors for Waterloo Regional Crime Stoppers and the Crime Stoppers organization in your community as well. And they do a lot of fundraising to raise the money that pay out those tips that you will be paid for when you call 1-800-222-TIPS and report something that you have seen. Help police do their job more through the use of Crime Stoppers. Your anonymity is assured. That is a guarantee. And you can help out these folks and help out your community at the same time. Find them online at waterloocrimestoppers.com.
Love it. And shout out to Sarnia for picking up a game. I don't think they're going to win another one. I'm just saying that Windsor Spitfires came into the playoffs as an absolute buzzsaw. And for Sarnia to pick up a game as an 8th seed, just got to give them the credit. A few people wrote off the Guelph Storm after losing 2 games convincingly against the Greyhounds in the Sioux, but they come home, win game 3 on home ice, hoping to do so game 4 tonight. I just want to point out, if anybody didn't see it, Braden Guy got an assist on the 5-3 goal for the Storm. It was, I believe it was an empty netter as well.
It was.
Sioux pulled their goalie, and then Brandon Guy, the captain of the Storm, scored the 6-3 goal, but he scored it from inside his own zone. Wrist shot went bar down from his own zone. It was pretty sweet to see. You don't see that too often.
That's all right. All right. The Hamilton Bulldogs look on the eastern side like we expected them to look, up 3 Cobb again as we record this over Peterborough. That's still the team that I think, Poper, is the team that you're going to have to go through if you want to advance to the Memorial Cup down in St. John's this year. So the playoffs only get harder after round number 1, but they look every bit the part of a title contender. And I'm with you on Windsor in the West, but we talked about it with the goaltenders they have there in Sarnia, and Benjamin Gaudreau obviously put in a pretty strong performance in game number 3 to get the sting that game. I'm not saying it's going to be an upset, but when you have goaltending like that, anything can happen in a given game.
I'm with you. I wanted to bring we didn't talk about this. I just wanted to bring up that Hamilton, obviously. I'm with you. In my mind, it's such an easy pick, but if I was into predictions, I would expect to see an OHL final with Hamilton and Windsor. That's my outlook. But our good friend Jay McKee, not one of the finalists for Coach of the Year, James Richmond gets it in the Eastern Conference. Your thoughts? A lot of people wondering how Jay McKee was overlooked.
It happens this way all the time, right? Well, it's easy to coach a team like that, Poper. Didn't you know that? When you have that much talent and then you acquire more talent, all you're doing is, tapping guys on the shoulder and it's their turn to go on the ice. It's easy. And I say that facetiously, of course, but we've seen this happen time and again in the game. And I'll go back to Joe Torre when he was managing the New York Yankees, because that's, I think, where we probably saw the last great super teams. And that's what everybody would say. And you overlook, Gaston got a little bit, if I stick with baseball, got a little bit of that talk with Toronto too. I think it's completely underrated and undervalued how much work goes into, or how much coaching or managing goes into dealing with all of those incredible talents. And I know New York Yankees or, early 90s Toronto Blue Jays are different than the 2022 Hamilton Bulldogs, but the idea is the same. It's harder than I think we give anybody credit for to coach a team with a lot of talent.
I agree with you. I think that there's always going to be at least two names involved normally, right? Like even in the West, Ted Dent gets it, but a case could be made for Mark Savard. That's a good team in Windsor, but they started off slow. And then as a rookie head coach to come in and turn that team around the way he did without getting Foodie back, which is what they planned on, he could probably be in the conversation versus Ted Dent too. I love the job Ted Dent has done, and he's a fantastic coach. Don't get me wrong. Great success in the pro ranks. But it's an interesting conversation because I kind of lean that way when I look at Jay's lineup in Hamilton. You're kind of like, well, yeah, but Scotty Bowman coaching that Red Wings dynasty, when you have that many egos, that many players that want the puck, that many players that want to be on the ice, it's not, your coaching changes. You have to be more so of a manager of people than an actual coach. And I think when you have a really good team, like a couple teams in the league this year, that you do have to change how you coach depending on what kind of team you have made up. But, and I mean, not that Mark Savard or Jay McKee need me to tell them, but they obviously both did a great job this year. And we're in that conversation for sure.
Still with the East, before we get to our guest who spent most of his junior career in the Eastern Conference, is Mississauga Barrie the best first round series we've got going right now?
Well, in the East, probably, yeah. I mean, in the West, versus the West, I don't know. I've only seen 50% of it, but we're seeing a pretty good one here. Maybe it's because of the rivalry, or maybe it's because we're so invested in our, we have the bias that we follow this Kitchener Rangers hockey club for 68 games. But I think it's been one heck of a series. I even think that, like that Owen Sound Flint series, I love it with all the drama involved and the back and forth. And now they're tied to give me 7 games of that, baby. Yes, sir. But that Mississauga Barrie series, I said before the playoffs started on this podcast that was the one I was interested in watching. I thought it would go deep. They're two teams that are matched up very well, and I think that I wouldn't be surprised when we see it go 7.
The goaltending in that series has just been so good. And listen, we've seen, to your point, even though you've seen 50% of the series, you did see game number 3, Kitchener-London, when Brett Brochu, I don't know what percentage he's operating at now. He certainly seemed lesser in game 1 in terms of overall health. He seems to be feeling better as the series wears on. I don't know, but he had a whale of a game in game 3, and then game 4 was just a great story, my bias notwithstanding. 17-year-old kid in his first Ontario Hockey League playoff game puts up 52 saves. Jackson Parsons was sensational. The only disappointing part of the game was that there were only 3,600 or so fans in the building to see it. Like in Kitchener, you missed a really, really standout performance in a playoff game. If you even get there for that, yeah.
Like that performance is crazy. I was at a national sales conference in Niagara for my real job and had to send a tweet about it because I saw the numbers. And I'm like, there's no way. I texted you. I was like, what is happening? Like, what am I missing? This sucks. 17-year-old first playoff start and he puts up a 52 save performance against the London Knights. Just insanity. Like I tweeted it, hold on, Rangers Nation. Like, this kid's special. We've been pumping his tires hard for about the past 3 weeks, but I wanted to ask, in that game, Kitchener was leading 3-1, and then with about 2 minutes left, London scores to make it a 1-goal game. How soon after that puck hit the net did you think to yourself, here we go? Because we've seen that London come back over and over and over and over.
Yeah, and I think based on that history, it crosses your mind essentially immediately that here we go. But I'll tell you what, you got to give that young Ranger squad some credit, because even though you thought that when Cody Morgan scored the goal to make it 3-2, they didn't really threaten all that much, at least not that I recall, to tie it. So and again, you talk about the performance that Parsons puts in against the London Knights. Luke Evangelista might have been close to double-digit chances in the game. Like, he was everywhere, and he was not one of the goal scorers for London. And Parsons even said after the game, because I asked him about that, he said, yeah, we talk a little bit on the ice. I have fun with him. Like, wow, like that's pretty bold, kid. That's pretty bold.
That is bold.
Yeah.
13 shots on goal for Evangelista.
There you go. Game. Yeah. So I wasn't far off the mark, because he was, and there were a couple of times he was robbed blind by Parsons. So it was a lot of fun. I just wish more fans had been there to see it. And I get that attendance is always down in the first round. We saw that game one in London too. It was like 5,500 or 58, whatever. That looks pretty empty in Bud Gardens. But anyway, here we are. They've been fun. The playoffs so far, and by the time we're issuing our next podcast, we'll have round one in the bag and see what things look like for round two, and who the Hamilton Bulldog, eventually OHL champions, are going to be facing in round two. So
17 years old, getting a first playoff start. Our guest this week had to watch all the playoffs in his first year because he was the backup, but soon after he led his team to 2 Eastern Conference championships as a member of the Toronto St. Michael's Majors, eventually drafted in the second round to the Carolina Hurricanes, went on to play for Carolina for numerous seasons, called up and down, spent a lot of year playing pro, played up in Washington and Phoenix before going overseas, now coaching goaltenders for the Belleville Senators. He is the pride of Blyth, Ontario, and the reason I'm doing this podcast not in the National Hockey League. You'll find out why.
That's it. That's exactly
right?
it.
Exactly. For Waterloo Crime Stoppers, here is OHL Stories with Justin Peters. All right, Petey, I got to start off with a question. I've told this story numerous times, and now that I have the source on the podcast, I need to know it's true. And I know it's going to bother Mike because he likes to start off in chronological order, but I'm going to jump right into it. Is there any truth to the story that at some point during your time with the Carolina Hurricanes, Rod Brindamore called your father to find out what you were doing in the off season because you beat Rod the Bod in a few fitness tests?
Oh, I don't know if he went that far. That's a good question. I never heard that. I never heard that version of the story, but yeah, he was. I don't know if I ever beat him in a fitness test either. Maybe the odd one, but I think overall, Rod the Bod took the cake every year. There's no challenging him.
Okay, well,
right, we got it from the source.
It's interesting though, because Poper's right. I usually, I'm pretty anal about this stuff, Justin, and I want to go in chronological order all the time. But I was ready to jump. I'm breaking my own rule here because there's a question that I just want to get right into. We heard the story from his perspective, so I want to know now from you why you kicked Adam Dennis's ass.
Oh well, that's another good question. You guys, I remember that very fondly. Actually, that was.
So does he, kind of.
It was his idea. It was his idea. It was his idea for that to happen. So that was one of the for sure the highlights of my OHL career. So that's got nothing but good memories and a lot of respect for Adam Dennis.
He told that story on this podcast. I was just curious what was going through your mind when the whole thing happened.
Well, I had a shutout going. I remember that. I remember, I'm from Blyth, just about an hour north of London. So lots of family and friends at that game, I remember. And I was with Plymouth at the time. But we were up 3-0. And I remember hearing that he had knocked out McDougall in Peterborough a couple of weeks before. So I knew he liked to chuck him, and I didn't mind it either. So when it all kind of came about, I know at the time we had a really tough group of guys in Plymouth with Tom Sestito, Jared Bowl, Shepley, Gino Paisolini. We had some tough guys. So when that line brawl broke out and he came out to center ice and we started chatting, and he said like he was asking that we were going to do it, and I was like, I got a shutout going. So and we kind of skated away from each other a little bit. At least that's how I remembered it. And then next thing you know, I hear the crowd just going crazy. And he had taken off the gloves and threw the bucket off, and away we went.
It's funny when you mention the previous fight, because when I asked Denny about this fight, he kind of laughed. He says, why does everybody ask me about that one? I beat McDonald in this fight like 3 weeks earlier.
Yeah. I knew about it because I knew I knew that I wasn't going to be messing around with just anybody. He had the TKO under his belt, so I was definitely had my guard up going into that one.
He talked about how nice of a guy McDougall was, and he felt that after.
Exactly.
Justin, let's go back to where it all started for you in Blyth. You played AAA for Huron Perth Lakers. You don't remember this, but you actually beat me out for a spot on that team. I still hold Scott Pettigrew responsible, but that's another story. I'm just curious, was that where your competitive nature came from? Because you were certainly quite the competitor.
I didn't know that, Chris. Sorry. You got to tell me. You got to explain this part to me. So we were at tryouts together with the Lakers.
Yeah, we were at Huron Perth Lakers tryouts. Yeah, I was playing in Minto. Grew up in Palmerston, so I know Blyth very well. And I had heard of Justin Peters because my good friend Tyler Doig eventually moved to Seaforth, and then you guys played together. So he had told me about you, and I remember going out to camp, and I was texting Doiger today actually about it. And he said, what do you remember from that? I said, honestly, I remember just going out there and at one point being in one end with you and Scott Pettigrew, and Scott was trying to show me what you were doing and how I should do it. And I just remember thinking, this is the best goalie I've ever seen in person. Like, this kid is unbelievable. I don't belong out here at all. Yeah. So we left the ice and I said to my parents, yeah, I'm good.
So did you play in Palmerston or for Minto there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I played in Minto. Yeah.
Awesome. So are you an 86 birth too?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. No, that's really cool.
Doiger and I grew up like 5 houses from each other. So we played together all the time.
Okay. Awesome. A small world. I didn't know the connection. That's awesome. Yeah. So the competitiveness, I think that just kind of came like from my dad's side of the family, just in being when we were younger, playing at home. I mean, playing road hockey in Blyth, playing with older kids. We had some good battles on the street playing road hockey. I think I don't know if that's something you teach, the competitiveness. I think it's just something you have or you don't, but definitely had some good battles as kids growing up. And then, going on with the AAA with the Huron Perth Lakers. At first, there was not a lot of kids that would come and try out, So at first, it was kind of like you show up and you kind of almost have a spot on the team. There was literally that little amount of kids trying out. So, we weren't the strongest team, but we got absolutely smoked, when we would go to tournaments in Toronto and London, these bigger cities. So I got a lot of shots as a goalie and hated to lose. So that really drove me to try and improve and just to circle up with the Lakers there, we find from where we started at the time, like 5 years, the last year we were able to win the Alliance. So we came a long way from that first year, and that was with Doiger, that we were able to win the Alliance and kind of put ourselves on the map as an organization, because, there were some dark days in those early years when we were getting pounded pretty good.
Why goaltending? Of all the things you could have done in hockey, why strap on the pads?
Well, being from a small town, not a lot of goalies in the air, like on our team. I remember as a kid that I always was like fascinated by the goalie equipment, and my dad was helping out with the minor hockey, Blyth minor hockey, the equipment lockers. Like he was helping with the jerseys, and I think it was his responsibility with minor hockey, had the keys to the locker rooms where And the goalie equipment was shared from, each year every team would pass down the goalie equipment. So I got to go in there and try on the gloves. And I was just fascinated by these older kids with the goalie gear. And when they got in, when there was a new glove, or I'd be in there always trying it on, I was fascinated by it. And sure enough, when it became time to have a goalie play in your team, that you had to have a full-time goalie, I think I had to fight pretty hard with my dad to let me get in there. And because I had tried, rotated out as everybody does at a young age. I don't even know if they do that anymore, but we definitely rotated out until I think novice, where you had to have a full-time goalie. And I that first year I was playing goalie, I think on the B team and for defense on the A team. And so I just got myself in there and eventually convinced my dad to let me be full-time, and it worked out all right.
Petey, I always loved playing the puck. I know you did too. You were exceptional at it. How did you learn to shoot so hard? Because you had a harder shot as a goalie than some of the players you played with.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember now, like, you reminded me of these cool memories. Like, so we shared sticks too in Blyth as minor hockey. And I remember, like, my stick was straight. I had this no curve on the goalie stick for the longest time, because that's just kind of what they shared. And I remember, like, just always practicing at first, not being able to raise the puck. And then then being able to raise the puck with the straight stick, and just always working on my shot. Just I don't know how it worked out. It worked out all right, but I remember having the straight stick and not being able to raise the puck. And it just bothered me so much. And watching, on TV, seeing Marty Brodeur and Ron Hextall then, and these guys that, Marty Brodeur scored, and it was just like, I wanted to do that so bad, and just worked after practice and during practice. Probably overplayed the puck as a kid. Probably the defense and the coaches were like, what's this guy doing? Stay in your net. But I was just fascinated by being able to do that. And I had a decent shot as a player, so I think maybe that helped translate a little bit.
On that note, do you remember the one you scored into an empty net against the Sudbury Wolves in Game 7 of a playoff series?
Absolutely. That's right up there with the Dennis fight, I think, with the memories. Yeah, absolutely. I remember that vividly. And it's funny, like, so that goal, obviously, as you said, it was against Sudbury, Game 7, first round, and we were up 4-2 in St. Mike's, so a smaller arena, which helped. But Matt Macaron, the tallest guy in the OHL, and I got to know him afterwards, and we've talked about this a few times. But he dumped the puck in on net, and he's from at center ice. And why he did it on net, I don't know. It was a huge help of mine, because I practiced a lot to shoot in the empty net, and I'd hit the outside of the net earlier that year in Sarnia. Anyways, he's 6'7". He's the biggest guy, and he shot in on net, and I actually had to shoot it over him. And all the guys, it was funny, I had to shoot it over him, but I practiced so much, and thankfully it went in. And I remember that feeling, like my body was tingling. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to celebrate. I was obviously put my hands in the air, and that was an amazing feeling. And there was a minute like 23 left on the clock, and I was just thankful no shots came on net, because if there was a shot on net, it would have went in. I was tingling and all crazy. I didn't know what to do.
Playoff goal, I'd be tingling too.
That's awesome.
It's the perfect segue to this story, because when talking with Doiger, I asked him about some fun stories, and he talked a lot about your competitiveness, which we talked about. But he said during AAA, when you guys were younger, it was like a 2-on-1 drill, and he passed the puck and you made a save, and then there was another group coming down behind them, but they scored, or someone from his 2-on-1 put the puck into the net when you weren't looking. You grabbed the puck and shot it into the mesh above the glass at the other end of the rink, and just stared at the player who put it in the net. Didn't even say a word. Is that something that you carried on throughout your career, of not wanting pucks in the net that don't belong in the net?
Yeah. I think probably some of my former teammates could probably speak for that. I think the competitiveness was a strength, but also a weakness too. Like at some points it just gets it got the best of me. And as I matured over my career, I definitely learned to relax a little bit. But Yeah, it was the biggest pet peeve of mine. If you weren't shooting on me to score and you just put a loose puck in the net, it didn't go over too well with my wires up here. It just was the absolute. It just pissed me off the most. And did some, I did some silly things because of it over the years. And I always thought to myself after, I'm like, if I was like myself sitting in the corner in the glass behind the glass, watching myself do some of the things I did, I would be like, what? I'm embarrassed for myself, right? But like I said, I think it was a strength, but also like a weakness where I had to learn to control my emotions and my anger and my competitiveness and try and use it in a positive way.
It's funny that we're talking to you today, Petey, because I've been fascinated with OHL playoff upsets lately. I thought this was going to be the year we'd see a ton, and I'm not sure it's going to work out that way. But I looked back, and you and St. Mike's were the last 8 seed to upset a 1 seed, and I think you did that the year before you got that goal against Sudbury. I might be getting my years mixed up, but do you remember coming in as the 8 and knocking off the number 1 Mississauga Ice Dogs at the time?
Yeah, I absolutely remember it. So that it was actually a year after, because we had a coaching change in St. Mike's. Bud Stefanski had taken over for Dave Cameron, and that year we got off to a really slow start. By Christmas, we were 16 points out of a playoff spot. I remember that, and we snuck in the last game. I think we might have had I could be wrong. I think we might have had a playing game with Kingston, or it came down to the last game of the regular. Like we were tied with Kingston, if I remember correctly. So we ended up getting in like the last day of the regular season, and obviously played Mississauga, and they had they were, I think obviously the conference champs of the regular season. They had Patrick O'Sullivan, Mike Uzis as their goalie, Dave Shantz as their goalie, Stefan Legion. They had some great players. I think Jordan Owens. That's a really good lineup on their team. And I remember that was a wild series that we were able to upset. I remember Tyler Haskins and Scott Lehman, Ryan Wilson, Corey Vitarelli. We had big performances by some guys that we were able to upset those guys. And because that year Ottawa was hosting the Memorial Cup, I believe. Ottawa was happened that if you would have won your conference, we would have made it to the Memorial Cup, because the host team, I think Ottawa was a really good team that year. And anyways, if I can remember correctly, it was something along those lines, but we definitely upset them, and a really, really good memories of that year.
What was it like going to Toronto for the first time away, like moving to Toronto in your rookie season, coming from a town like Blyth?
Yeah, great question. That it was definitely a huge culture shock. It was huge eye opener. Just obviously Blyth has 1,000 people, and as you know, the small towns, things were, we don't have a traffic light or any buses. I grew up 50 meters from our public school, kindergarten to grade 8. So, not a lot of commuting going on there. And then I went to high school in Wingham, I had to take the bus, but definitely, eye opener moving to Toronto. And, I rode the city bus to school. Just different way of life, obviously. But it was a really cool experience. And I still, to this day, I live in Mississauga now. I went back to Toronto for a lot of summers as a pro and trained. I trained with Matt Nickel at the old St. Mike's Arena. We were there. I was there for probably 9 or 10 years of my career, and always end up back in Toronto. It is the hockey mecca, hotbed of the world, really, as far as resources for training and coaching and treatment. So I'm really lucky we were really lucky and fortunate to have such a great network there in Toronto.
Real quick, if I can, Mike, just real quick. We talked about my first question alluding to just how shredded you are or were in your playing days. But when you were at Effie Medill in Wingham, how many trips down to the Frosty Queen?
Yeah, we made a few trips down there. poutine and ice cream. Yeah, they had lots of good snacks. I haven't been back there in a long time, but Wingham's really built up. They got McDonald's down there now, and a couple new gas stations there. It's really built up there by the looks of things.
You're thinking the same thing as me, Poper, talking about the small town. First of all, if we're going to talk Wingham, yeah, okay, Frosty Queen, but how about Bell's Pizza? Let's go.
Yeah,
Meatball sub out of Bell's Pizza any day, please and thank you. But I was going to mention Blyth now, though, PD. Look at it now. Harry Potter festivals, Cowbell Brewing. Come on, place is growing too.
Absolutely. The Bly's really they've had the festival there for a long time, and I think it's a big part of to keep the town running. Bringing people in the summers, and my mom had a store on the main street for growing up there, and so obviously the festival running through the summers, a big part of the business there. We have the Blythe Tannery, the Houston's Flour Mill, the Baton's old mill there too. There's lots of stuff going on. Sparling's Propane, and the Sparling's family in Blythe, they they'd done a ton for minor hockey, and there was a big renovation done to the Blythe Arena. I don't know what year it was, but probably in, I would say, the early 2000s, they did a big renovation, and I know the Sparling's family was a big part of that. I think they got the Zamboni for the town, and they've done a lot to keep the upkeep of the main street in Blythe, and they've given back a ton to that community, and given lots back, and we're really thankful for everything they've done.
The brewery helps tourism, but so does having the Peter brothers both play pro hockey. Now everyone wants to go back to Blythe. You got the O'Reilly brothers from down the road. They were playing, still playing. When you first went to Mississauga, you eventually ended up playing under Dave Cameron, but you mentioned a name I want to ask about, in Tyler Haskins. I got to know him a bit in Guelph from my time there. Do you have a good Haskins story for us?
Oh, Haskins. Yeah, he ended up being our captain. He was a great leader. He was a really competitive guy too. I know they always gave him a little trouble. I remember people were trouble for diving a little bit, but he drew a lot of penalties, and he was a great leader. And that, like I said, in that same the Mississauga series against them, he was a big part of upsetting it. And I chummed around with him quite a bit, the last couple of years there. We had a few good nights. Yeah, we had a few good nights, causing some ruckus around Toronto. The nice thing about playing junior hockey in Toronto is, it's the good and the bad, but no one really knew who you were. So you didn't get a ton of fans, but you could get out and do whatever you wanted, and no one really cared either.
Did that change a lot in Plymouth? I'm guessing probably not.
As far as like no one know who you are?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what? Plymouth, they had a really good like core fan base, and it's a small town too. So as far as you felt like you were important in that city, I could say, because it was just so small that everybody kind of knew everybody, and you weren't sneaking off to any pubs or anything like that in Plymouth, put it that way. Especially with the 21-year-old drinking age in the States. I just finally turned 19, and then got traded to Plymouth. So in Plymouth, it was more, you had little house get-togethers, and you weren't getting out in the town too much there.
I mentioned Dave Cameron. Now back in the league with Ottawa, obviously went up to the NHL for a while. What was he like as a coach when he was with you?
Dave Cameron had a huge influence on my career. He taught me leadership, preparation. Like I was saying, he always talked that there's not one situation in a game that you're going to see that we haven't covered in practice. And we practiced a ton. I remember practicing like 1 hour, full hour, and then flood, and then another full hour. And he taught us work ethic and hard work for sure. And Bob Jones was assistant coach there too, who actually is now an assistant coach in Ottawa, working here with Ottawa's farm team. So we kind of came full circle to see him at training camp last year. It was kind of cool. But Dave Cameron for sure is one of the most influential guys on my hockey career and personal life, because of how he taught me, to be a pro and how to take care of yourself, how to show up and look the part, dress the part, and be the part. So I have a really special spot in my heart for Dave Cameron, everything he did for himself.
It's funny, you talk about being with Ottawa's farm team now, which of course is Belleville. And when we were talking earlier about St. Mike's and the arena itself, I mean, that place is a barn and everything's like right on top. It feels so tiny. We know the ice is the same, but it makes me think about Belleville back in the old Yardman Arena days, which had Olympic size, playing in the St. Mike's arena. Was it different? Did it make it easier as a goaltender? Like, does it change anything for you?
Yeah, that's, it's funny coming full circle here in Belleville. Like my first year in junior, I was the backup to Andy Kyoto. So I didn't actually play a game in the playoffs, so that first round of the playoffs. But we had played Belleville and it went to 7 games and every team won on home ice. We lost every game here and we won every game there. I think it's a huge difference. It was a huge difference. At the time, I think it was easier. It was easier for us at St. Mike's going to bigger ice than it was for teams coming in to play on the smaller ice. Because things happen so quick. From a goalie's perspective, I loved it because like everything was like right on top of you. There was no plays happen quick, but scoring chances over the blue line really. And here in Belleville, they can skate themselves out of a scoring chance. The thing that I hated playing in Belleville as a goalie because the hash marks were so wide. So usually on the Olympic ice, the hash marks and the circles, they're the same distance apart, whether it's Olympic ice or NHL ice. Just there's more space on the boards. But in Belleville, the circles were right over in the corner. So there was such a bigger distance between the hash marks, and it really threw my angles off. I had a hard time playing here in Belleville, and I don't think I ever had much success as a visiting team here, but definitely a home ice advantage for both teams. But I actually think it was easier. It was more of an advantage for us at St. Mike's, going to bigger ice and harder for teams coming in playing on our smaller ice.
Was that your least favorite place to play?
Junior, I think it was like I had the least success. So yeah, that would probably be. I thought it was a great rink and awesome atmosphere. But I remember that year there was Matt Stajan was on the team and he got a big high stick in that series. And I remember a week later, after we beat him a week later, he scored a goal for St. John's in the AHL, or had an assist, and then he scored his first NHL goal for the Leafs. And he still had the stitches out on his face from the high stick he took in the series. But yeah, that's probably safe to say that it was the least favorite spot to play because of how poorly I did.
We talk a lot about in your profession, you move around a lot, you get traded as a player, you might move from place to place as a coach, etc. But when you're 19 years old and you get traded from Toronto St. Mike's to the Plymouth Whalers, what's that experience like for you?
Yeah, I remember that very vividly because what had happened is that year I got traded, I started off poorly myself. And then in our team, we were just really struggling as a team. And it was kind of like I needed a fresh start, and I was a 19-year-old that year. We were, out of a playoff spot at the time. My numbers were poor. It's like I needed a fresh start for myself, for my career. And I remember very much because I went in and asked for a trade, and that was one of the hardest things I ever did. Like you feel like you're letting your teammate down. And I remember talking to Bud Stefanski, and it took a lot of courage to go in there and ask for that to happen. But I did, and I was really glad that they honored it. And Bud was great, respected it, he understood, and I didn't want to be a distraction to the team, but I just felt it was what was best for me at the time. And thankfully, I was able to go to Plymouth and met some great friends there and had a great second half of the year, I guess you could say, because it was early December when that happened. It worked out well, I think, for both sides.
We talked about playing for Dave Cameron. What was it like playing for Luch?
Bellucci, yeah. So
yeah.
Bellucci was a great coach. He was a player's coach. The guys, he had the respect to all the guys, but he had a really good relationship with all his players. And I know that a lot of his former players to this day still keep in touch with him. He's really personable, really approachable guy. Like I said, had the respect for the players, but they knew he was the leader, and there was he had a really good personal relationship with them. And I know from like James Neal, who I still keep in touch with, still is in touch with Bellucci. They talk a lot, and he's, you don't hear too many bad things about Bellucci. He's a great coach in the OHL. Now to see him in the NHL with Pittsburgh having success is awesome.
I'm curious, Justin, when you first went to Mississauga, you mentioned Andy Chiodo, and he was a pretty big name in the OHL at that time. Did he help you kind of learn what it takes to play in the OHL, or maybe was it more so just your limited time in Vaughan that maybe helped?
Yeah, that's a great, Andy Chiodo and me and Andy are still real good buddies to this day. We coach in the summer together, and he's, I could say, a mentor. He was a mentor then. He definitely took me under his wing. His family was so generous and so welcoming. He was from Etobicoke, so we live at St. Mike's. I had my villas out in Etobicoke too. I remember his mom and his grandmother. They would, in the playoffs, every round we won. We went to the conference final, so we had two team dinners at the house, and they're Italian, and they cook these amazing meals for our whole team. And I'm talking like every player had a chicken parm, every player had like sausages, every player pasta, like this huge meal, this huge spread that I didn't know. Like I grew up like meat and potatoes, like didn't have very much. I hadn't experienced much of different foods from different countries, so a home cooked Italian meal was incredible. And to see that, and they had us over the whole team over their family, and then as Andy went on to pro, his family always had me in the summers. I would come into the summers for a week here and there and train. We trained together in the off season, and then still trained together the last 10 years with Matt Nickel there, and now coaching with each other in the summers. He was a huge mentor for me through that first year. It was, as we talked before, moving to Toronto from Blyth, obviously a big change, and then my first time moving away from home, so definitely a little homesick, and then not playing a lot of hockey in the OHL. Getting to play Monday nights with Vaughan was huge. To be able to just play hockey and go and play a lot was great. But then there were some tough days, for myself mentally, just being away and feeling like, I wasn't having the success that I wanted. It felt like at 16. And he helped me put things in perspective, and then we talk about work ethic, like that guy taught me how to work too as a young goalie in OHL. Like, you weren't going to outwork Andy Chiodo, but I tried my best a lot of days. But coming into St. Mike's, I heard stories about him and Peter Budaj. I came in the year that Peter had left, so I heard stories from the guys about them working and competing against each other in practice. And I got to see firsthand what work ethic was from Andy.
Kind of connected to that, you've mentioned Matt Nickel's name a couple of times. When did you start taking your personal fitness as seriously as you do?
When he was 6.
Well, I'd say, like, I always took fitness really seriously. I always wanted to, like, just be competitive. I wanted to win fitness testing. So at St. Mike's, I remember coming in and it was like 155 pounds or 135 pounds on the bench press as many times as you can do. And it was like 155 pounds on the squat rack, front squats, as many times as you can do. And just as a 16-year-old coming in and like getting dominated, I remember that, like, wanting to come in and win these competitions and win fitness testing. So then I went back home and in the summers and just trained in my backyard at first, and then started training with you mentioned the O'Reilly brothers. Brian O'Reilly, trained him, his two kids, Cal and Ryan, and then my brothers and Tyler came and joined us, and we had a good little group going in the summers. But we trained in Goddard, and we trained pretty hard. So it wasn't, though, like, I trained hard, always trained hard, but it wasn't until like I got injured and hurt my knee, where I realized that as a goalie, you don't need to be like 220 pounds and squatting and winning the bench press on the, in competition, like at fitness testing. I needed to learn how to be mobile and take care of my body to be able to play a lot and be flexible and all these other aspects. So that was probably when I was like 25 or 24, 25, where I realized that that's when I moved to Toronto in the summer and started training with Matt Nickel and, just learned how to train smart and almost like try to learn how to take care of myself and build a plan. So in season, I could try and maintain that same stuff we worked on this summer.
So on the heels of that, just to go back to my first question, what was it like in the training sessions when you first saw Rod the Bod?
Oh, Rod the Bod. It's like every story you hear about Rod the Bod, as far as like work ethic, and it's true. Like you can't make it up. Like, the guy just like he just lives in the gym. He does, and he's absolutely shredded. Like I'm telling you, absolutely shredded. But he's on the bike every morning. You walk into the rink, he's there. When you show up, he's on the bike 45 minutes. He does his business. Like he just has his work. He goes about himself. And I know he's still doing it because when I got to play with him, and then he was our assistant coach. And like, I wonder if he might have worked out more as a coach because he was at the rink a little more, like it's definitely in the afternoons. And there was one year where the trade deadline was coming around and I got called up and they didn't want to put me on waivers to send me back to Charlotte. So they said, I'm going to stay with the team for the rest of the year. But I didn't play. I didn't dress. I didn't practice with the team unless, one of the other goalies came off the ice type of thing. So it was like, so Rod the Bod would shoot on me every morning. And he was the guy shooting on me before the team. And we were doing like goalie drills and stuff. And then when we would get on the road, we'd show up to the hotels. Like when you fly into a city the day before, Brindamore, he goes to the gym. He goes to the gym. Some guys go grab a beer. He goes to the gym and trains like it. And so I started tagging along with him. And got to see what this guy was like. And we work out in the mornings early before practice. And like, I don't know how he's able to do it, but he's a special kind, like he's a special individual. And that is work ethic. It's crazy.
Obviously, this speaks to your time with Carolina. Second rounder, 38th overall to the Hurricanes. What was draft day like for you?
Draft day was awesome. It was in the Carolina had hosted the draft the year I was drafted. So I was drafted by the home team. And the whole experience, my family had planned a trip. We were going down to Ocean Isle Beach, just south of Ocean Isle Beach is in North Carolina, but it's right close to the South Carolina border. So we had this trip planned where we were going to go to the draft, and my grandparents had come along, my aunt and uncle, a couple of my dad's brothers too. But this was kind of on my mom's side. We had this trip planned, and it couldn't have worked out better. Getting drafted by the home team, having a really cool, the crowd always cheering for you and happy. And then getting to go spend a week down in North Carolina in Ocean Isle Beach with my family, had an awesome vacation. And then I got to come back home, a week later and had the fire trucks, the fire department from Blyth meet us on the edge of town. And the town had a great welcoming party for me at the Lions Park. And I'll never forget it. Still have the banner that the kids were walking in front of the fire trucks. I still have it, that they had all signed and said congratulations. So the town of Blyth had supported me, throughout my whole career and even before that in junior. So it was a really cool experience to be able to share, that experience to come back to Blyth after the draft. And everyone was obviously very excited for me. And I really appreciate all their support.
If we can go back a little further, that draft day, I'm sure your brothers were there and both still playing. I'm curious just what it was like growing up with two goalies in a family and one player. Normally it's the opposite. Who got to play goalie playing road hockey, and was it Alex?
Yeah, you know what? Like, it's funny that none of us played goalie in road hockey. Kirk Stewart and Jeff the Cat Elliott, they were the goalies, and we were always forwards. Me and Anthony always forwards. Alex was quite a bit younger. Alex is 10 years younger than me. So when I was, I left home at 16. Alex is only 6 years old. So some of those, and then coming home, even in junior coming home, we still played road hockey after that. Like, we played road hockey, like, still probably 18, 19, 20 years old. Coming home, we still had good road hockey battles, but with our buddies. But yeah, we were never goalies. Always forwards. Always forwards. And Kirk Stewart and Jeff the Cat Elliott were always the goalies.
You've talked a lot, Justin, about work ethic, and I can't help but wonder about one of the other guys that you would have encountered at least briefly in your pro career when you were with Washington. What's Alex Ovechkin like?
Oh, he is like it's like you're in awe every day being around that guy. I don't know how else to describe it. Like his skill level and that the shot, obviously, he has just a presence. He has just a presence. Like, and I can say, we talked before about like guys shooting the puck in the net, like when you're not looking, and that's kind of like a lack of respect, I say, for the goalie. I've never met a guy like Ovechkin has the most respect for goalies. Like you see his shot, obviously, and I can tell you, he will come down like a puck could be rolling a little bit. He'll take a slap shot in the corner instead of on net. Like his shot, when he decides to come in and shoot to score, usually it's going in. But there's, if he's coming in and he's going to take a shot and the puck rolls a little bit, he doesn't want to hit the goalie in the head or anything, He'll just put the puck in the corner. Like he has so much respect for the goalies. In power play practice, the penalty kill guys, like he won't take slap shots when they're in the lane, right? Like he doesn't practice that shot with guys there. So let's say near the end of penalty kill and power play practice, he'll say, "Okay, guys, I'm going to shoot the puck." So guys know just to get out of the lane. So it's just stuck me. It just stuck with me there, and that's when he rings the bar. But it's either going bar under the bar or over the net. So that guy, it was really special, really really cool to see his talent level and his shot and his presence, and like he's a solid man too. Like he's like 240 pounds, solid. His forearms are huge. Like he hits so hard too. It was a really really cool to just to be a part of and see that on a daily basis.
That first practice when they're like, okay, we're going to practice power play. Petey, you're down there. Were you like, you know what, Charlotte seems like a great idea. I'll just hop on the bus. It's cool. Yeah. Keep your per diem. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. But I can tell you, like when I talk about him shooting the puck in the corner, like the first time I saw him do that, I was like, what the heck? Like this guy, he comes down, like gonna take a slap shot and the puck rolls a little bit, just shoots it directly in the corner, like off the glass, like so far away from the net. You're like, and then you're like, oh my, okay, like, he meant to do that. Like, he didn't want to hit me in the head. I like this guy, like that's yeah, it was really cool, man.
Did you ever see him smash Coca-Cola or root beer or something on the bench?
Yeah. That's I've seen some videos coming out now where he talks about it, but absolutely, like it was Coca-Cola on the bench, Dr. Pepper between periods, ginger ale if he had a tongue, like if he wasn't feeling well. It's like he's just what he's able to do. Like it's crazy how he's able to perform, and you see like he's still producing obviously at such a high level at his age. It's just amazing. He's just one of a kind.
What led you to make the decision to go over and play in Europe?
Well, it was I mean, after my time in Washington, I was back in the AHL. I went to Hershey. I got put on waivers my second year in Washington, went to Hershey, and I've really been battling some bad knee injuries where it was like I knew the days were getting numbered for my career. And then it was the first time in my time playing pro where I didn't have like something set up, a contract set up before July 1st, right? They started this new window where you could talk to teams. And it was the first time where it was like, a couple days before free agency, and it wasn't like I didn't have a guaranteed contract that was going to be signed July 1st. So it was kind of like, I was thinking, I had this opportunity to go over to the KHL, and I thought, okay, that was a good stepping stone, go there, try and make some money and cash in at the end of the career. And it didn't work out quite the way I planned it. As far as that, I didn't survive that long in the KHL, ended up getting fired that first year in October. But my experience in Europe was really cool to be able to travel and see over there for sure. But really made me appreciate North American hockey and how we have it here and how good quality the AHL and the minor leagues here are in North America. That's for sure.
Both your brothers still playing in the minor leagues you're one brother, sorry, was in the minor leagues, now overseas. Your other brother's still in the American East Coast League. When you were playing when you were playing pro in the US, did you ever play against Anthony?
No, we never got to that fast. We never did. Obviously that would have been really cool to do that, but never got to. It's something we talked about for sure. And yeah, we always had some good jokes about it, but never happened. No.
Would you guys have fought?
That's probably not. Probably would have talked. That's what I say. Like, we definitely talked, because like we had some good battles, obviously, in the driveway, like road hockey. And he's he's 4 years younger than me. He's a bit of a shit disturber. So he's always that guy that's like poking and prodding at you, and just trying to egg you on. So in some heated moments, we always probably joked about, if we ever played against each other, he would beat me up or whatever, but never got the opportunity. So we'll have to keep that one open.
If I'm not mistaken, Justin, your first NHL game, your first NHL start, you were also named the first star of the game. It was a game against the Islanders, if I recall correctly. But what do you remember from that day leading up to when you found out you're going to be starting that first game as a starter in the NHL?
Yeah, I remember it very well. Got called up, traveled with the team to Buffalo, and it was a kind of a weird year where there'd been some injuries. They had signed, instead of calling me up, they ended up signing Manny Legacy. They signed him and didn't call me up, and I was doing pretty well in the AHL that year. But after looking back, like, I probably wasn't ready. But they were in a playoff run and trying to make the playoffs, and it was better for me. Now on the coaching side, I see that I needed to keep playing the AHL. Obviously, I took it a little personal. You wanted to be that guy called up, and probably just motivated me a little more. Michael Layton and Manny Legacy were the goalies, because Cam Ward got hurt, and then they signed Legacy, and then Legacy ended up getting hurt briefly, and then so I got called up and joined the team and traveled to Buffalo, and my family came to the game in Buffalo. So a little visit with him after, and then in the room, Paul Maurice told me, "Hey, you're starting tomorrow." And I was like, "Holy!" But the game was in Long Island. My family's in Buffalo that night. So they traveled back to Blyth that night, and then they ended up jumping on a flight the next day out of Toronto. So lots of traveling, and they made it in time for the game and against the Islanders, against Ricky DiPietro. Yeah, we got the win, and obviously a great memory, something you never forget. And I remember, seeing my parents on TSN with a beer in their hand, sitting in the upper deck, watching the game. Really cool moment.
3 National Hockey League shutouts. I'm assuming you remember them all.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I know they were against Washington. Were they all against Washington? I don't know. But
I don't know.
Two of them for sure against Washington. Because when I signed with Washington, when they first became the free agent and signed with Washington, it was like, kind of like they were the team that I got my shutouts against. So I remember, obviously, some of them there, but I don't remember if all 3 were against Washington. I remember 2 of them for sure.
So you can say you shut out Ovi. Perfect.
Yeah, it's funny because he when I had signed with him, he FaceTimed me too. Like, he's a really classic guy too. It was like probably 6 a.m. Russian time, and he had FaceTimed me too. It was late at night here by the time everything was out, and he FaceTimed me, congratulated me, and said, "It's good to have you on our side now too." So I played against him a few times.
That's awesome. You know what? It doesn't surprise me at all. A guy with his talent and what he's like, you just know that he's well-rounded in everything, not just in the game of hockey, right? You can just tell.
Absolutely. And he's just one of the boys, right? Like, he's just a good teammate, a good guy, loves to have fun with the guys. Like, he's like, his talent level, his skill level, he's just so far elite above everybody else, but yet he's just a normal guy, just wants to go have a beer and shoot the shit with the guys, and just wants to be a part of the team and fit in, and he does that. And the whole group in Washington, like, Nick Backsham's a really, really good leader there too, and he's a big part of that leadership group. And, they're just a really, really solid group of guys that are really close knit, and Tom Wilson too. Like he trained with Matt Nickel in the summers too. Still keep in touch with Wilson a little bit. Just a really, really good group of guys.
If we can ask about another former player, it was your first time up in Carolina. You spent 9 games there that season, but the Wizard, Ray Whitney, is always someone who I've loved listening to just a few post-game interviews. I'm like, this guy is made for media. What was the Wizard like?
He is like, he was so well respected in that locker room. Very funny guy, like you said, really witty. But I have a funny story with him. So Pete Friesen, the athletic therapist, would always do the Friesen 5K run in the summers, like a charity run. And it would happen in August, around August, when all the guys were down early August training and getting ready for the season. And I remember we were doing the 5K run, and he was running, and we were running. I was kind of running behind him, and didn't really want to pass him, because he's the older guy, kind of veteran guy. And I remember it was like, I don't know what part of the run it was, but because some people just take it like really casual, it's a charity run. Other guys are like, trying to race. So we're out for the run, and eventually he just like looked, he could hear me breathing down his neck. He's like, you can just go, like kind of one of those things. I'll never forget that. It was funny. He's like, and then afterwards shooting the shit, talking about it. It's funny. That's my rate for sure.
How do you like the coaching side? Did you envision yourself ending up doing this?
Well, I didn't always know. I didn't always, but I'd always loved the position. I first got to come to Toronto to work with John Elkin as our goalie coach in St. Mike's, and he taught me technique, and I never had a goalie coach or been to a goalie school before that. So it was just such an eye opener coming to St. Mike's, being able to work with John Elkin and see what technique means, like what the proper leg to get up on, like these tiny things that I just played on kind of natural ability. And then, and then you get into the pro ranks and you see how important, the goalie coaches are, and how important it is to have a plan as a goalie to have consistency. And then I got to work with Tom Barrasso. Tom Barrasso was a goalie coach. He got hired on to be like essentially the development goalie coach. And I think Carolina was kind of ahead of the time at that time. And because it was my second year pro, and he was hired on to work with the prospects. And so he came down to Albany, and I got sent to Florida to UCHL, and he came to Florida to work with me. He taught me so many the details. He taught details, and he taught preparation. He was really, really detailed person. Just like where to leave the puck, like every detail mattered. And then I started understanding, like how important these details are, and have a plan, and how important it is to have this plan to fall back on, because you're not always going to feel your best in the net. You're going to have nights where you just feel crappy, and you need a foundation and a plan to help you get through those nights. And so then I just fell in love with it, and then I got to work with Mitch Korn in Washington, and that was a whole different level of preparation, a whole different level of doing video. Like he was big into video, and he was ahead of the curve. And then going to Hershey was where Scott Murray, who's now the goalie coach in Washington, it was him that really, really helped me in that point in my career, and kind of taught me how to move and move efficiently. And we worked on tracking as a way of movement, and which is my foundation today as a coach. And my time with Scotty was huge. That really, really opened my eyes to tracking, and just kind of fell in love with the position there, where on technique and how to move and how it could help me. And then just kind of started coaching with Andy in the summers. Andy Kyoto was my goalie coach in the summers. Well, I was training with Matty because Andy was transitioning out of hockey, and then I started coaching with Andy a little bit. And the opportunity came up after I was still playing in the Czech Republic, and I played for Troy Mann, and the opportunity came up through Troy Mann and Scott Murray. It all connected, and I arrived here, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I really, really am enjoying the coaching. Really, really great young prospects here with the Ottawa organization. Matt Sogard, Philip Gustafson, Kevin Mandelize, and Levy Marilanen, who I'm going to watch tonight, plays in Kingston, our draft pick. And then getting the chance to work with Matt Murray when he came down here too. So I've been so fortunate to work with such these great goalies and learn from them and try and help them along their journey.
Excuse me, I want to ask about tracking and get into that, but I think we'd bore Farwell to death if we got into the nuances of goaltending.
You goalie geeks, yeah.
But I'm going to stick with the goaltending geek question though, because you were in my mind, one of the last goalies to kind of go away from the traditional. You were the Bauer Supremes, I think they were, and they still had the knee rolls and stuff. And then they went to the flat pads. And in my mind, you were one of the last guys to go away from the knee rolls. Was it a challenge to move away from what you were used to?
Yeah, I'd say probably it's just the change, right? Like I was just not a person that was always open to change, probably a little stubborn. But and same as Bauer, like I wore Bauer equipment my whole career. I right from when I was 16 years old, Todd Brown, the Bauer rep, came to my house in Blyth, and he'd hooked my brother up with a set of pads, and it was just right from there. It was the relationship. I stuck with Bauer. I wore the very similar pads for a very long time, and then I wasn't the most but especially near the end, I wasn't as flexible and as agile as the young guys are now. So that's when I realized that how important the equipment was. And I remember with Doiger, like growing up, like we always talked about, I was always fascinated by equipment like we talked, but we'd have contests like what color tape a guy used on their stick or what kind of stick they use, what curve they have, what kind of helmet. Like with Doiger and the O'Reilly brothers driving to summer hockey tournaments, we'd have these contests. So I was always fascinated by equipment. So I realized that, okay, like I need to change and get more modern essentially. Because of how much of an advantage it helped with sealing the ice and transitioning into your posts, being able to sit in RVH, because that was a whole new technique too that it kind of came through the last 5 years of my career that you need to evolve with the game, and just like as a coach now, I need to continue to evolve.
All right, Poper's always got like one more question before he gets to his. Let me just ask this one, because I miss Belleville a lot, really, on the OHL circuit. I get it. I know how it works, but how are they taken to the Belleville Senators, the AHL team there in Belleville?
Yeah, we just clinched a playoff spot last week, so there's a lot of excitement here. The facility here in Belleville, like I'm in the office right now here in our coach's office. They did an unbelievable job. Like the facility is beautiful. Like it's really beautiful. The town, I mean, the town of Belleville, I didn't know much about it. I didn't really know much about Prince Edward County, but it's a beautiful area here. There's lots of cool spots in the county, as you guys probably know, and it's a real tourist area, especially in the summer. Last year was my first year here with the team, so we were actually located in Ottawa because of the COVID protocol. We only had permission to play in Ottawa. We played at the CTC, the Canadian Tire Center there, where the Senators played. So I wasn't actually here. So this is my first year actually in Belleville. And I think that, the COVID was tough on the us being away. It was definitely tough. I know a lot, it was tough on the fans. It was tough on the staff here. They had to let some staff go, but the staff now, they've brought the staff back. You can tell throughout the year, just more and more increasingly, more and more interest in the team here. Obviously us in the playoff race, we've had some great crowds lately, and it's been really, really cool to see, just the energy now building up in the rink, because obviously important hockey, and they've done an awesome job, the front office staff now too, of incorporating minor hockey teams, things that they couldn't do, in January when you're shut down, we had no fans again, right? So now that they've been able to, have some promotional things, it's been great. The energy's been great. You can really see, we travel down to Hershey, in January, they have 10,000 fans. We came back here, we had to play in an empty rink. So you can really see how important the energy and the fans are to help with the atmosphere, as you guys know.
That's awesome. It's good to hear. My last question, and I've been saving it, kind of bringing it full circle. I can't believe we've said Doiger's name as much as we have, because I don't think he needs any excuse to have a bigger head than he already does. But this last question comes from him because he told me a story. Obviously, you guys were friends being young, growing up together. You talked about it a lot. But then you guys play against each other in pro, and he was playing for Columbia. And well, I'll let you take over, Justin.
Yeah, I forgot about that until right now. Yeah. So I said I spent some time in Florida in the USHL. Actually, it's even more full circle. Troy Mann, our head coach here, was the coach of that team in Columbia, was Doyer's coach. So, yeah, I had a couple tough games in a row, and as we talked about a little bit here, I had to like the rough stuff a little bit. So I remember, I don't know what happened. I think it was, my wires were crossing. I think we were losing 5-1, and I had Doiger in my sights, and I don't know I think I just jumped him. I got kicked out of the game, 10-minute misconduct. I don't know if it was even a fighting major or what, but I got kicked out of the game and had to go sit on the bus for the third period because I was too scared to go back in the rink. But yeah, not one of the proudest moments. Good talk. It was funny seeing Doiger for the first time because I didn't see him after that game. I obviously in the bus, but the first time seeing him after, really good chuckle. I don't think he was too happy with me, for sure, but I didn't give him a choice. I know that. I didn't give him a choice. He didn't have much of a choice to say no. He was just the first guy in sight, and I got kicked out and had a nice, probably a 12-hour bus ride back to Fort Myers.
He said that he was in front of your crease, and then you I think he got a little too close to the crease and you jumped him. He said that you took him out for dinner at Cheesecake Factory after though. Yeah, or was that another time? I don't know. He said you took him out and you bought a cheesecake.
I think what happened was probably that was the next time we saw each other. That was the next time we saw each other. I probably owed him a nice dinner. Because it was not, like I said, probably wasn't the most sportsmanlike thing to do, but it was probably because I knew that it was him, and I wasn't going to get, I think I could handle Doiger a little bit. So.
What a great story to wrap it on. Justin, it's been great. Really appreciate your time. Continued success with the Senators, and we look forward to watching you move on in the career.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It was fun. It was really cool. I obviously didn't really know the full connection there, Chris. So it's cool to put together, and hopefully we talk fast here someday soon, guys.